why would you even do it? Like, what made you decide to do that?
What, being a musician? Or anything? What made you decide to do that? I'm going to assume that he means, or she, being a musician. It's the only choice. The alternatives interested me zero amount. So when I was going to a school careers meeting, which we had to do every now and then, back when I lived in the UK, when I was much smaller and had hair, the question that was always posed was, what do you want to be when you're older? And my answer was always, well, musician, obviously. The only thing that I want to do at school is music. And they're like, yeah, but what do you want to be? I'm like, a musician. Yeah, but that's not really it. And it's like, well, I don't want to go and work in an office somewhere for someone else and make more money for them than I'm making. I'm not interested in anything else enough to spend my life, to dedicate my life to it. So being a musician was the only answer, is why.
That is basically that was the question. So you got the right end of the stick with that one. There's definitely an interesting point there about how it's not just music, it's any artistic kind of just anything that's maybe considered more fringe, I guess, that is immediately dismissed as like a hobby, even though there are people making silly amounts of money, doing it. There's definitely a sort of a belittling kind of, it's the typical joke about the family Christmas where they're like, oh, how's the band? And it's like, and I feel like, it is that you could be in literally the biggest band in the world and it would still probably be the same conversation, I feel like there's a sort of sorry, go on.
No, I'm just mirroring what you're saying. I've had lots of those kinds of conversations in my life with people who know you're in a band and they want to know, like, either, oh, where you playing then? You got any gigs coming up? And asking questions with an assumption that it's not a successful thing and that it's this kind of small hobby, like you say, that you do. And I speak to a lot of people as well, that some of my students, because I got drum students who are trying to do this, and their experience is similar as well. Maybe some of them even may not have come from a household that is supportive. So their parents' experience has been a safer route, let's say. They've gone through the schools and they've got the job and they've got the money and it's what you're supposed to do. But that isn't the only way to be happy and to feel fulfilled. And both myself and my wife's an artist, we can't imagine doing anything else. We have done other things, don't get me wrong. TesseracT hasn't been the full-time thing forever, and it's still not, if I'm being honest, the full-time thing. It's what I do that's a priority above everything else, but there are other things I do to maintain my life as a full-time musician. And that's one of the myths I like to try and dispel quite quickly, because people assume, rightly or wrongly, that this is like the only thing that we're doing, because we're operating at this level where our job is to make it look and sound as big as possible, like put on this huge production. It might look like we're touring on the nice bus and we're doing this and getting paid loads of money, and it's like, no, we're still very much doing a lot of this ourselves and hiring people that we can afford, not everyone that we want to work with. We're very selective about who we work with because of budgets and things like that. This is one of those rabbit holes that you said we might go down, and man, I could go down that one so far. But yeah, just people, if you haven't got someone behind you telling you that a creative thing that you enjoy doing can become a career, let me tell you that it can, because I didn't have anyone behind me for whom that had happened before, but I've made it work and I haven't gone to school for it. So you can totally craft a way to make your hobby you can make that the thing that you do, and it can make more money than you might get working at McDonald's.
Yeah, it's a scary step, I think, just kind of going. I never liked sounding too sort of self-important. We're saying, oh, we're going against the grain, and it's just it sounds like you're kind of doing this triumphant heroic thing. It's like, no, you're just doing, I'm just doing what I want to do. I don't want to try and make it sound like I'm like, oh, the rest of you are sheep and we're off doing this cool thing. It's like, but yeah, I think it's difficult. It's a difficult step to maybe make if you've got a lot of channels kind of sending you one way. I mean, did you talk about sort of the way people sort of treat you or sort of discuss, your career with you? Was there a point where things sort of changed, where you there was a noticeable change in how people would maybe talk to you based on sort of the, quote unquote success of the band? Has that ever kind of changed over the years as the band has grown?
Not really, because you meet people who have got no idea who the band are, and if I'm speaking to my neighbours, and some of them know that I'm in a band, but that's as much as they know. They know that I go away on tour, and that to some people might make you think, oh, so the band's doing okay then if you're going away on tour. But it depends if you know the band. I'd say if you're into TesseracT, then there's this perception that the smoke and mirrors that we create is somewhat effective. If you're not into the band or you haven't heard the band, then if you were to have a conversation with me, you might assume that I'm just playing down the local pub with my mates every other weekend or something like that, and somehow making it work as a full-time musician. I'd say that's probably the best way to answer that.
Yeah. In terms of like, sort of maybe not advice, but anyone that's looking at going that way, I have a couple of friends that one in particular that I talk to quite a lot, who he's kind of interested in a whole other career, but he's quite sort of, I don't want to say settled in what he's doing, but there's definitely a path there for him, and I think he's a bit nervous to sort of jump ship and go and do this other thing. And I sort of did that a lot earlier. I did that sort of first year of university, so there weren't so many things pulling me. There was still a bit of a sort of pathway there for me, but he's quite, I think, nervous to abandon ship, and he's got a lot of commitments. He lives in London, it's very expensive, and what do you think would be your advice for someone that maybe is umming and ahhing about kind of making that leap in whatever form it might be?
It doesn't need to be a leap. I did it in baby steps. So my first baby step was leaving the nest, so leaving my parents' house to move from the Midlands in the UK down to Reading to be closer to the guys that I was in a band with. So I didn't move down there for a career. I moved down there because the people that I wanted to play with were down there. And then when I was down there, we set up a rehearsal studio, which I won't tell you that whole story, but that turned into me owning a bunch of rehearsal studios. So alongside my day job that I had, that was very much just an office job, I was doing graphics and making documents look nice for this like company that did really boring things. I had this thing that I was doing on the side that got to a point where it was making more money than my day job. And then when TesseracT got the opportunity to tour America for the first time, and it was like a 6-week tour, we had to go away, everyone had to leave their jobs to do that kind of thing. I'd already got a way of making money that didn't require me to be in one place. And the advice that I'd give to someone is, you've got to be willing to work harder and put yourself through more subjective pain, I suppose, short-term difficulties, to give the thing that you actually want to do for the rest of your life the best chance of succeeding. Because the more energy that you can put into that, the better chance it's got, the more luck you'll generate for yourself. And one of the things that you've got to figure out, especially in the creative world, is if you're transitioning from a job into the thing, or trying to get into the thing that you want to do, which might be painting, or it might be being an actor or whatever, you've got to find a way to have a business, have a way of making money that doesn't require you to be in one place. And it can be something that you do from your laptop. For myself now, because I haven't got those rehearsal studios anymore, I do drum lessons. So I have a course that's online that people sign up for, and I do mentorships that last a year as well, with up to 5 people a year. And the combination of those things alongside TesseracT enables me to continue doing TesseracT without worrying where the money's coming from. If I didn't do drum lessons and I just sat on my arse and played Elden Ring or whatever all day, which I could do, I could choose to do that, I wouldn't have a house over my, I wouldn't be living in a house, and I wouldn't be able to eat, and I wouldn't be able to go away with TesseracT. So baby steps is the advice. Like, discover something in as much spare time as you can possibly make that enables you to make some money and scale that thing. And that doesn't happen overnight either. Like, don't get disheartened when the first thing doesn't work and the second thing doesn't work. Like, the people that succeed in these things are the ones that have made numerous failures, and they've learned from those failures what to do next time to make the next thing work, including myself with the drum lessons and the websites and all that. I've tried it a handful of times and it just hasn't worked, and I've redesigned it every time it hasn't worked. So I'm constantly trying to tweak these things to make life a little bit more comfortable. So yeah, that's the advice I give.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's difficult to maintain that. There's kind of a couple of things that made me think of. One is that there's always that kind of that kind of fear to make that step, even if it is just a baby step, just a kind of whether that is like, I don't know, working one less day to put the time into something, or, putting your evening towards your rehearsals or making a website or whatever, But I suppose my advice, I mean, I'm not that far down the line, but, is I suppose it's only going to get more difficult the longer you leave it, really. You're going to have more and more commitments and things,
Yeah.
So you might as well, rip the Band-Aid off, as they kind of say. I think maybe,
try
like I said,
and
you
do
don't
it.
Yeah, go on.
And don't try as hard as it is to do this. And I haven't necessarily taken my own advice for my entire life, but try not to bog yourself down with too many financial commitments if you're trying to do something creative full time. If you are riding around in the nicest car that you can get, that you can afford, and that's spanking loads of your money, just think about priorities. I've been through car phases. I'm approaching 40 now, and I've had nice-ish cars all up until the last few years, where I've just been like, I don't know that I give a damn about this anymore, if I'm being totally honest. Like, you can't see behind me because the curtain's closed, but I've got ducks and I've got goats and I've got all sorts of things out the back there. And sometimes you have to take those to a vet, and you don't want to be putting a goat in the back of a BMW because it makes a mess. I want a car that it can go in the back of, or a van or something that I don't care that much. And that's exactly what we've got now. So making decisions that make the most sense, that don't cost you a fortune and don't get you bogged down financially, is another thing to consider. If this is something that you're trying to do full time.
Yeah, that's. I never thought goats in BMWs was that's not something.
That's a first.
It kind of made me think of like some sort of weird, like Schrodinger's cat. Like, if you put the goat in the BMW with tinted windows, is there a goat in there? Or I don't know where I'm going with that.
As the person inside the car, yes, there's definitely a goat in there. It don't smell great.
Yeah, but outside the car, once you close the door, is there a goat in or not?
True.
This is the kind of highbrow question selection you've signed up for. I think it's difficult, and I suppose I'd love to have a flashy car. I've just unwillingly had my car's just been. It's not meant to be falling apart, but just random things have been going wrong for about the last year. So I'm trying. I've made no effort to have a flashy car, but I might as well have bought one at this rate. Like, it's just absolutely falling apart. But I know it's tricky, I think, as well, because as a young person, there's all the temptation to have all these things, the fancy that watch or phone or car or whatever. And I suppose, the irony is, I guess, as you get older, you maybe feel less of a need to impress everyone.
Yeah, totally.
So it's a weird, I'd love to have a really flashy car, and I'm willing to, but I'd probably buy it a little bit before I should buy it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Which it's a tricky one. Do you feel like you kind of have sort of moved past to sort of a phase of that kind of? I'm not saying you ever necessarily, this would be a very quick judgment of me to say you're trying to impress everyone, but you know what I mean. I think everyone goes through some sort of part of their life like that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. When I was at school, it was important to me to have a really nice phone. I don't know why. It was when phones were like, people were just getting phones for the first time. when I was 14, 15, 16, something like that. And it was like the old Nokia phones that had Snake on them and those kinds of things. It wasn't iPhones. And I remember really wanting like this tiny little Nokia 8210 or whatever it was called. And that, for me, at that time when I was just doing like a paper round to make money, was success. If you know what I mean, if I owned this thing, if I had this product, I'd feel successful. And the same is true now for a lot of people with, you know, iPhones and whatever, and you've got to have the one with the nice camera and this, that and the other. Honestly, like, other than the immediate satisfaction that you get from holding this nice thing, that feeling goes really quick. And you know, I'm paying I've got an iPhone, I'm paying every month for 24 months to own it, and I couldn't say I couldn't say that I'm getting that much happiness from having the new one versus the one that I gave to my dad a couple of weeks ago. That was my old one. It did the same thing. You know, if you can save yourself $50 a month or whatever it is by just being a bit more disciplined around things like that, consider how much happiness you're actually going to get from this thing. It's not the, you know, yes, I like it. I'm giving this as an example, but I actually do like having the newest phone even now. But I can afford it. You know, I'm at a point in my life where I can afford to have that, and I don't worry too much about it. But when it comes to cars and things like that, yeah, absolutely. I'm not trying to have the thing that's costing me $800 a month plus. I want the thing that can get me from A to B without costing a fortune. And it might not sound like it from my voice, but I live in the US now. I used to live in the UK, obviously. And the one thing that is a lot cheaper over here, which isn't an avenue we need to go down because I don't know that much about it, but like fuel compared to the UK is so cheap here. I'm paying, I think, $50 to fill my car, which is, I used to pay more than that when I first passed my test in the UK, which is kind of crazy to fill the car.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I've got a Corsa and I fill it up for like 60 something quid.
Man, yeah, don't bring that over to America. Oh, sorry, do bring that over to America. You'd save a fortune if you did that. Yeah. But yeah, that was just a random tangent. But yeah, just re-emphasizing, like, consider how much happiness you're going to get from something before you buy it. Right? If you can spend a moment to think about that thing, and don't just buy it. Like, wait 24 hours as well. That's something I try and do because I can feel really strongly that I need this item, and it's so easy to buy it. And I'm guilty of this a little bit with games, like computer games on Steam. I've got so many games on Steam and I haven't played most of them because I see it and I think I'm getting a deal or I'm really excited for it. But then I've got so many other things I'm trying to do that I don't have time to necessarily play that game. This is a really small example, but if I think about how many games I've bought, how much money I would have if I hadn't bought them, like, you know, you can make small decisions that can make big impacts, and that is a couple of examples of them. Yeah,
it's I know it's tempting, like, because I mean, I literally, speaking of, I got a new phone a few weeks ago, partly because my old one was falling apart, but I think when buying new phones, it's more a case of just prolonging having a thing that works, because I know in 2 years time, if I've bought a really crappy phone, it's going to be a really, really crappy phone in 2 years.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
That's one of the few sort of exceptions I make there. But yeah, so what prompted you to move? I didn't actually realize that, because especially because you've got that little booking thing, it just obviously converts the time. So in my head, I'm just whereabouts in the US and what prompted you to move over there?
I'm in Charlotte, over on the side of the US in North Carolina. My wife is American, so we met on tour a fair few years ago, back in 2005. 2015, not 2005. I wasn't touring in 2005. And we originally lived in the UK, but doing what I do for a living, it doesn't really matter where I live because I've got to fly somewhere for that thing. You know, when we go on tour with TesseracT or we're doing a recording or anything, I've got to fly there. So we agreed we'll live in the US because she's way more comfortable here when I'm away for 6-7 weeks at a time than if she's parked in the UK, which we experienced for a little while. We have we lived just over the Welsh border from Shrewsbury for a while. We bought this house there. It's a really nice cottage. It's really nice and quiet. You could see England and Wales if you looked out the front window. There was just sheep and cows. It's the idea of like countryside bliss, which is probably nice if you're like 70, but as like mid 30s and early 30s, me and my wife, we liked it for about a month, and then we're like, oh man, there's nothing to do here, is there? There's like 30 people that live there and there's nothing in the village. What do we do? And after 9 months we moved to America. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, so we live in East Charlotte now, and you get a lot more for your money over here, I will tell you that. Yeah, the amount of property and the space that we got here, I can't imagine what it'd be anywhere in the UK. It'd be a stupid amount of money.
It does look like, whenever you see, like if you watch, it sounds silly, but if you watch The Simpsons, they're meant to be like a normal family. Their house is huge, like that's not
it's pretty accurate, if I'm honest. The price of the house that we got here is comparable to what we'd buy in the UK, and in the UK we would have a modest home on an estate somewhere, and over here we've got about, I think, 0.75 of an acre, 15 minutes drive from centre of Charlotte. And you could imagine living that close to a town in the UK, or 10 minutes from a town, and getting something with that amount of space and privacy, and you just wouldn't get it. Or detached even, it'd cost you a fortune. Yeah, so that is one of the perks.
Yeah, I've still never been to the US. It's very high on my list of tempted to just, speaking of impulse purchases, I'm tempted to just like flex payment a flight and just stay somewhere cheap and just go for like, a few weeks or something. But
yeah,
gotta be.
Our tour manager hasn't been to the US before. His first time is in the upcoming tour that we've got, and he's so excited, and I'm really excited for him, because the most memories that I've got of the US are from our first few tours, where we're driving ourselves and we're seeing places for the first time. We saw Vegas for the first time. You see the Hollywood sign. You see driving through New York, going to the Grand Canyon and Niagara Falls and all that kind of stuff. Like, we got so much of that in the first tour, and it's quite special when you're able to see that much of a country over a few weeks in that much detail, and they hit all these landmarks. It is cool. There's a lot of America that's just flat, though. There's an awful lot that's just flat. We used to live in Austin in Texas, and for Christmas we'd drive back to Charlotte, where my wife's family are, and that drive is 24-hour drive, which I've done in one drive. I've just driven through, which is mental. Dangerous. I wouldn't ever want to do that again. But that drive is, man, yeah, it's not great. It's a lot of flat, and we hit a lot of places that you wouldn't necessarily want to get out the car. But anyway, I won't get into all that because I'll get in trouble.
Yeah, but save it for another. Yeah, I can't have my podcast blow up in like year one and a bit. That wouldn't, But going back to speaking of persevering, I mean, this is now episode 120, I think it is. So I've been doing I've been doing 2 a week there for nearly a year or so. I mean, because I did 1 a week to start with while I was just getting it off the ground, and it's got a way to go, I think, before it's and I've done I'm trying to get back into doing the band thing. I actually played a do you remember that acoustic gig that I don't think you were there, but James and Dan did, and with Silosis and Malevolence.
Yes, I remember that,
because my band sort of opened that in Birmingham. Cool. Small world connection. That's how I know Dan and James. But yeah, I tried to do the band thing, and I can definitely, the perseverance thing is definitely, I think I heard someone say how people always root for you at the beginning when you make the decision to do something, or where you start something out, and they root for you at the end when you're doing it. But that kind of middle ground where, like, you're kind of getting there, but nothing that exciting's happening. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of people in your corner. It's not like there's none. I have good friends and obviously family and stuff. But how do you kind of, obviously, like you said, you're a full-time musician, and there will have been, I'm assuming there were some bumps along the way to get there, and I'm sure there still are some in the way. But like, what how do you kind of get through that middle? I don't know. I suppose my better question is, where do you feel you're at in that sort of whole? Do you feel like you're still in the middle somewhere, or and how do you kind of process that part of life?
You always feel like you're in the middle. I think I don't know at what point you feel as though you've made it, because your goals change. So when I started out, before TesseracT had done anything significant, it was have an album and it be in the record shops and play some shows where you're selling it at the merch stand, and you've got t-shirts that you haven't printed yourself down at the local t-shirt printing place, and CDs that you haven't burnt yourself. And it was a very clear material goal. And even before that, it was just be in the band I want to be in, be confident that the band that I'm in is the absolute best band, and we're writing the music that's my favorite music. And then once you've got the CD and you've been into a fancy studio and you've done a tour, those things are ticked off. It's like, well, okay. So they were like bucket list items for my entire life up until that point. So next, what comes is scaling up production and being able to fly with more of my own gear, so that when I get to the destination, I'm not using some drum kit that's being held together with tape and hopes and prayers. Like, you start to have very niche goals, I suppose. And now that's just scaled up with each album that we've released. We want to travel more comfortably. We want to be as comfortable as possible when we travel, because we've discovered, especially probably as we get a bit older, we're not 20 anymore, that you need to prioritize recovery and being comfortable as possible. Being on a bus or a bandwagon in the US is the way to do that, because you can lie down, you can get in a bunk and close the curtain and have a nap, you can sleep when you're traveling. There's food, there's a toilet on there, there's a shower on there. It's pretty comfortable, as comfortable as you're going to get, really, before you've got enough money to get private jets and things like that. Which I don't know if that's ever in our future, but oh my god, if it was, that'd be sick. But there's a stupid goal. There's me talking about, don't get that nice BMW, just get that private jet. That's what you want.
All the goats you want in that, man. That's
all the goats. You can have a
whole just Noah's jet.
Noah's jet. That's the goal. That's my life goal, Noah's jet. But yeah, just your goals change is what I'd say as you progress, because you start to reevaluate things, and your life changes over the years that you do these things, and you live in a different place, and everything changes. So just remain fluid, and just remember that it's about, and this is cheesy and everyone says it, but it's the journey, it's not the destination. Because you get to where you are, you get the thing, and there's the immediate rush of happiness, and then you wake up the next morning and you're on to the next thing, and it's not permanent. The feeling that you're trying to get by achieving this thing isn't permanent. Album 5, hearing that for the first time and being together and recording that was such a huge goal for us, and it's done now. It's not released yet, it will be soon, but that was a massive goal for us, to be in the studio recording together for a long period of time, because we haven't done it that way before. So yeah, just another example of that kind of thing, how everything moves. And the other thing to remember is, which is a really important one, and only something that I've learned, man, I want to say the last few years, because I've thought a bit too much about this, but every single thing that you put out when you're a self-employed musician or creative or anything, you put so much work into this thing. You're doing a video for YouTube, or you doing some kind of marketing campaign for a product that's on Instagram and Facebook and whatever. You put so much work into this thing that feels like the work, and when you do it, when it's finished, you feel as though you should just be able to say, hey, it's finished, and there's a line of people waiting to buy it. And that is never the truth. What happens is, once you finish the really difficult thing that you've been working on for months or years, then the work begins. And it's only ever just one step as well. Like, you do all this effort and make an amazing music video, it just puts you one step further along. You might get some new fans, like from that one music video, I don't know, we haven't been able to measure this, but let's say 50 more people are at a show for us or something like that. Might be 10, might be 1. But even that one person, just having one happy customer, one happy fan of us recommending us to someone else, so much growth happens through word of mouth. So being continually creative and putting something out that pleases you, like really pleases you, rather than trying to please other people, is the way to stay happy doing this and to enjoy the process. And just remind yourself every time when you want to pick up your phone and see, oh shit, 1,000 people like this, or more or less, whatever your idea of number success is, all that is actually bullshit, because you could do the exact same thing the following week and the algorithm has changed, the goalposts have moved, and you won't hit that same number with the exact same content. So try not to look at numbers and have that as a measurement of success. Just being consistent and putting something out that people come to kind of expect, showing you're consistent and committed to the thing, is the thing that will in the end turn this into a career for you. And I'll stop rambling in a minute, but there's a fantastic thing that you can look up called 1,000 True Fans. And for any creative person, this is worth a read. You get through it in probably an hour, something like that, maybe a bit less. But it's all online. It's the idea that if you've got 1,000 fans behind you, whatever your product is, and they each pay you for whatever you release in a year, an average of $100 a year, you're making 100 grand a year. Tell me a single creative person for whom that wouldn't equal a fulfilled, comfortable existence. 100 grand a year, you've got to be fairly reasonably successful in a job by most people's standards to be getting 100 grand a year if you're going up the corporate ladder. So that's just something to bear in mind. 1,000 people, once you've played a show in front of 1,000 people, you can visualize it. It doesn't seem like that many. So it's just a helpful concept, and it's an interesting read. That I'll try and find it if you want to link to it at some point.
Yeah, I've definitely heard the concept before, and I think 1,000, it seems like a big and also not a big number at all. Kind of, when you think of the scale of some of these artists nowadays as well, like you see that Taylor Swift tour, and she's got more than that out the back in the parking lot, singing the songs. It's I mean, like I recently put out a reel and it got, I think, nearly 5 million views or something, which I've like literally never ever had. But it's just a dumb video. Like, it's quite funny, but I think it sort of, I can show you the video at the end. I think it just sort of riled up a few people, like, because I think they just didn't get the context of it. It's not like offensive or anything. It's just like silly. And then, literally the next reel I put up gets like 2,000 views or something, and it's like, well, there's no, I can see why. If I look at the video, I'm like, I know exactly, and especially the response to it, I know exactly why it's done that many views. But in terms of like value, it's way less valuable than most of the stuff I put out, in terms of what I think people take away. So if anything, something that I actively think is providing less genuine value to people has got literally, thousands of times the amount of views that some other stuff has. So it's just so not a measure of, it's a measure. It's got to be a measure to a point. Because if you want to make money and build a career out of it, it's got to be people. You've got to have customers, right? I don't want to use the word customers, but it kind of is in that sense, But yeah, I think it's become a bit too difficult to measure. It's very difficult to measure things in a more holistic way. It's so easy just to look at the numbers because that's your answer right there, And I'm trying to in that trap,
People love to see the stupid thing. Not saying I haven't seen your thing, so I don't know.
It is pretty stupid. If you can say that, it's fine.
Yeah, people love seeing, the dog doing something dumb or the person falling off the skateboard or whatever. But you put something genuinely helpful out there, and your true fans respond. Is what I've found. If I post something that is designed to be helpful, that's giving advice, that's giving a free lesson, that's doing something like that, the people that like and comment on those types of things tend to be the ones that are the true fans that will buy TesseracT merch, that will come to the concerts and things like that. And I could just put something out that's really stupid, and I'm sure it would get more views, because it would. Me drumming in my pants or something, it would get more views because it's horrendous looking. But
well, in the US, that would just be that would just be you drumming normally clothed, wouldn't it? With pants, because that's...
Oh, yeah, it's American, isn't it?
Yeah, you caught yourself out on that one.
I hadn't thought about that. But, yeah, I mean, just try and stay true to yourself. I mean, again, as cheesy as that is to say, it's the truth. Like, you can... If you're trying to make a quick buck by making something dumb and getting numbers so that you can approach companies who want to, promote their products through your channels, there's ways to make money doing that, sure. But I prefer to reach people one-on-one and have a meaningful relationship with people and help them with like personal drumming subjects. If someone's trying to achieve a certain thing, they're stuck on a specific level of drumming, whatever that is that they perceive, I'll try and help them get past that, and how to discover what to practice next from within, rather than focusing out at what everyone else is doing, because you look at what everyone else is doing and it can quickly bog you down, and because you start comparing yourself to them. And whenever I've done that, it's just resulted in me feeling crap about myself and about my playing. So I've stopped doing that completely, and I only now identify what my next round of things is to practice from looking at my own playing, like videos of my own playing, performances of me on stage, stuff like that, because it's a very truthful way to observe yourself. There's no filter if you've stuck a camera up on stage and you watch yourself performing, especially from an unflattering angle. There's an angle from my left-hand side where I like to put a camera that captures all the dog shit. And man, like if I put a camera above me, everything I do looks really slick. If I put a camera on my left-hand side, it looks like I'm chewing a wasp while I'm playing, and it's not a good time. But like I say, if I watch that one, I know the technique things that I need to correct. I know if I need to sit up straight. I know if my pedals are too far away. Audio stuff's really obvious because you hear fluffs, but you can also work on efficiencies by placing cameras in those kinds of positions. For a drummer, this is really specific. Yeah, I've forgotten how we got there now. Oh, we were talking about your video, weren't we? What was your video out of interest?
So it's literally just a video of me and Finn McKenty, Punk Rock MBA. Have you seen his channel? But either way, basically he completely is a joke. It's just like a funny conversation we're having in the podcast. He said, "Oh, Americans don't have accents. You have an accent," because obviously a joke. Like, he's obviously self-aware enough that he doesn't genuinely think that. And then we have this whole like jokey back and forth about, how to pronounce certain things. And I've now learned that aluminum and aluminium are actually spelt differently. It's not just...
They are spelled differently.
I didn't know that. I thought it was just that Americans just got it wrong. And I got pulled up on that by literally thousands of people. It was funny, I was teaching, so I teach guitar, and someone, one of my students, is a younger guy, he's like, "I saw you on Instagram earlier." I was like, "You probably did," which is weird. But yeah, that's all, and all of the comments are just people saying, like, giving like the whole etymology of the word and like going, "Of course, everyone has an accent," and it's just like, no. But what's good is, I mean, it's got about like 10,000 comments or something silly like that, which are all just people like that, mostly anyway. There's a few like just people laughing at it. But then it's got a lot more likes than that. And I like to think the likes are people going, "That was funny." Like,
yeah.
And then hopefully that outweighs all the comments. Because the likes, you don't really know anyone liked it. It's just, they just tapped a button. Whereas a comment, you know what they've said.
Yeah.
So
you know what they've said.
Yeah. I like to think you wouldn't like it if you thought it was stupid, like the comments people do. So the comments people, it's
it is funny though. I mean, I wrote out a thing the other day, because every now and then I write out these things I call morning coffee posts. And it's usually something that I'm trying to be helpful. I'm trying to tell people, this happened to me. This is my experience. This is what I learned. And if it helps you, there you go. And there was one that I was writing that it didn't end up being that, so I didn't end up posting it. But the idea is that it's very easy, even for us in Tess, I think for anyone, to start scrolling through the comments on the things that we release. You know, we put out the War of Being video the other week, and it's, you know, so many flipping comments. It's insane. And which is incredible. People are engaging, right? It's the intention we had was for loads of people to hear it, and people commenting, engaging with it. That helps it reach more eyes. So brilliant. But if you start going down the comments, so many of them are positive. You know, oh, brilliant work, guys, best thing you've ever done. And then someone is like, he's not using 8-string guitars, I don't like it. The production on this isn't as good as their first album. And they say something that's just like, and as the artist reading that thing, that's the one you remember. You remember that crappy comment or a couple of crappy comments more than you remember the number of likes and the number of nice comments that you've read and the things that were in the nice comments. All of that stuff just gets forgotten, and your brain's just like, I remember that guy that said that really crap thing. And then you feel like, oh, you want to say something back to this guy or this person. You want to say something back, and it doesn't serve anything. Like, and people coming to the rescue as well. The people love to jump in on those comments and like start slamming the person that said this grotty thing. And all it's doing is pouring fuel on a fire that had no place being lit in the first place. Like, the funny thing about all these comments and reviews, if I'm honest, is that it's just someone's opinion. And no one's opinion on anything has swayed me, you know, to do or not do something that I've really enjoyed in my life. I can't understand why anyone would want to, and this is what I was trying to do as well, is actually understand this. Why do people go onto someone else's work that they've taken? It's taken them a lot of work in their life to reach the point where they are comfortable enough and confident enough in this creative thing to put it out to the world to show everyone else. Why does someone come in and say something crap about it? Even if you don't like it, I just wouldn't watch it. I'd watch a bit and then move on to something else. If I'm doing that, if I'm on YouTube with nothing else to do, just watching video after video after video, I don't stop on the thing I don't like to go, don't like your haircut, don't like your face, don't like your mum. Like, what? I mean, that was a crap example of the comment, but because people say generally things that are quite specific, but it's always something crap. And I've thought to myself, and this is getting really mean now, but is it a low intelligence thing? Is it a immaturity thing? Is it a product of, like, I'm going to say bad upbringing, but like, you haven't grown out of this thing. You haven't ever been told a different way to be. It's not been explained to you that behaving like that to anyone for any reason isn't acceptable. And I didn't want to say that because there will be people reading it who have said these things and would take that maybe as an attack. And I don't mean it as an attack. I'm trying to understand the thought process, the reason that anyone would do that to someone else, because it's an attack. It's really shitty and I don't like it. But hey, I don't know. Maybe I've done it at some point and someone's going to go back years on my Facebook and go, you called this person a bell end at some point. You're the worst. You said you didn't like insert band. You didn't like this band's album at some point. Yeah, but that was 10, 15 years ago. Like, I've grown up since then. So
I always have the one where I think with the podcast, there's got to be bands that I've said that I don't like, or that I've never like sort of just shout on a band on my podcast, but there's definitely there's one or two maybe where I've said like, oh, I just don't get it, you know, for whatever reason it's just not for me, and I guarantee at some point I'm going to have one of them on, and then someone's going to be like, in episode 23 you said, and then I won't be able to get out of that. Just be like, yeah, I guess it did. Yeah, that was yeah. There's no way out of that. Like, you know, I know that's probably going to happen at some point. I don't think I don't think I'm stupid enough for that to have happened yet. but if I do enough episodes, it's got to happen, especially if the platform grows and, people start throwing names at me and stuff, which
if you do start shit talking a band, though, this is the funny thing, and you post that as a clip, because it's something negative, it'll get loads more views than anything positive. People love bad news.
Oh, I could probably have twice the following if every episode I just shout on one thing or one band. Or, but then I wouldn't really like my followers at that point. So what would be the point?
Yeah, that's true.
What was going to ask you about the teaching? So I teach full time. As full time as I kind of need to do it. And with guitar. And I feel like from that, and actually from the podcast as well, something I feel that I've improved at, or that I feel, I don't want to say I can do better than other people, but that I feel like I've a sort of skill, I guess, that you just develop through certain interactions, is that I'm much better now at seeing people's kind of mental processes from a bit more of a bird's eye view. Like if I'm sat there watching someone, so for example, I had a student come to me a while ago, and he was kind of really getting bogged down in technique, and he played me something and I was like, your technique's kind of fine, I think he wanted this answer, and I think from having developed my teaching and just generally just observing people and talking to them, I think straight away I could see this isn't really about playing. I don't want to get all psychology, but it's like, I think you're trying to find an answer here, and I think I've got better at that kind of thing. And the reason I gave the example is because I wanted to ask if there's anything like that where you feel through teaching or it doesn't have to be through teaching, but that was just the thing that came to mind, that you feel like you've learned about people and how they work.
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar to what you just said, to be honest. There are certain people who come to me who are great and maybe haven't been told that they're great. So like you say, the technique thing, I can't do this thing to the standard that I think I should be able to do it, and I'm seeing people like who are at the top of their game on YouTube or whatever playing these things effortlessly really fast, and I feel like I should be able to do that, whereas the answer is like, no, you're really good at this thing, you need to just believe in yourself and like follow your own path. You don't need to do what all these other people are doing, because there's very often something at a genetic level that's putting a cap on where you're going to get anyway. So for as much as I've practiced, I'm not a shredder on the drums. I'm not flying around the kit like some of my peers are. And for a while, especially at the earlier parts of my career, that was an issue for me, because I had all this self-talk that was, oh my God, all of your peers are better than you. Like, you're this imposter, you're doing this thing, you're trying to be at this level and you're not at this level. And what actually happens when I talk to any of these people, when we're at the same festival or we're on a tour together or whatever, is that we've all got this mutual appreciation for each other's playing, and everyone's got the same questions about each other's playing as everyone else has got, and no one's looking at you like you're crap, which is what I was saying to myself. That I'm not as good, I can't do that thing that you're doing, that makes me shit. No, that's not necessarily the truth. So a lot of my students, I feel like my job is to remind them that their abilities are within them, and they might need some unlocking, but that's just a matter of time. All that is the amount of time you're going to spend doing this thing, practicing it enough to a point where it feels good for you, and then you can start to apply it musically. Because that's the other thing is, especially with drums, especially it's the same with guitars, there's going to be a principle that's the same, is taking a pattern or a rudiment, something that's quite fundamental, practicing it to a point where you can begin to use it musically, and it's not just a pattern that you're practicing on a pad. Because so many people get bogged down with, I'm working through this book at the moment on this pad, and I'm going through these patterns, and I've got no idea which of the patterns to focus on or how to start using them musically or anything like that. So the things that I teach my students are the handfuls of patterns that I use that enable me to play most of what I play. So instead of giving them a book and years and years and years and years worth of stuff and saying, man, this is going to take you a long time to get through, we're going to need to do lessons for the next insert X number of years, It's just, right, these are the patterns. Practice these. Now the next stage is trying to use this as a fill, and this is how you do it. Or the next stage is trying to use this as a groove, and this is how you do it. And this is how I do it in TesseracT, so you can kind of see it in the real world. So it's trying to. I try and just make everything as easy as possible for people, and I try and be as approachable as I can for people as well, because that's another thing. Sometimes people are a little bit nervous when they're talking to me, which is always a bit strange. But yeah, I just want to be as helpful as I possibly can, because there's a lot of things that I've come to realize aren't true when it comes to self-talk, and that usually self-talk is the thing that's stopping a lot of people from achieving their full potential, because they're comparing themselves to people who they perceive to be better than them.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I think I've definitely focused on the songwriting side, and that's what I pride myself in, on the guitar, and it's really become more a tool now for that. It's very rare that I write something and I think I want to put a guitar solo here, or it's not that I don't think they're cool, I really like them, but I just never. I've written a couple of songs in the last few weeks or whatever, and there's never a point where I've kind of, not in either of them at least, where I went, oh yeah, I feel like a solo needs to go here. And doesn't mean they don't. There's plenty of bands where they have brilliant solos, but I think because I've focused, it's so easy. It's hard to measure songwriting, isn't it? Really. Whereas speed and vibrato and all this stuff, you can kind of, it's a bit more observable. So I've definitely had that where I've seen other like peers of mine. And they can play they know more chord like changes than me and stuff. I mean, my knowledge is hopefully decent because it's my job ultimately, it's where it needs to be. But there's a level above where I'm like, and I have to recognize I've not put the time into that. I've kind of tried to focus on things that I deem more important for me, and it's difficult, like you said, you've kind of specialized in your thing rather than going down what X, Y, and Z routes as a drummer, I think it's difficult I think it's important to try and measure the thing that you're doing, not the thing someone else is doing, which is very hard to mentally wrap your head around.
I teach very specifically, like I teach the niche that I know something about, because I haven't gone to drum school. I applied to one and didn't get in, so I'm like, bollocks to this, I'm doing it my own way. And I know a lot about that because it's what I've focused on, like a laser beam for the past 25 years or something stupid. And that's what people come to me for help with. And I'm also very selective about who I work with, because every now and then I'll get someone coming to me saying, oh yeah, I'm in this band, we're trying to play technical stuff, and they send me a video of themselves and it's just like machine gun blast beat stuff. I can't do that. That isn't my world of music at all. Me trying to play a blast beat would be an embarrassing mess. So it's just not an area of music that I've ever really given a damn about, and it's not something I practice. So I don't teach that. And I'm really honest with people, and similarly, people who may be too early on in their journey, because the areas that I want to spend time in kind of require that you've spent a bit of time trying to explore some of them by yourself, but you feel like you've reached a point where you're stuck, or you're not quite sure how to apply these things musically. Because anyone can help with the beginner stuff, and including yourself. You can just spend more time behind the kit playing and playing along to songs, playing to a metronome, practicing those kinds of things, trying to get your timing down, exploring all of that stuff. Doesn't necessarily happen with a teacher. It happens through you experiencing it and trying it. And where a teacher can come in is kind of helping you, stopping you from making bad technique choices, or playing something, maybe you feel like you've got timing down, but you're actually ahead or behind, or you're skipping or something. They can help you identify those things, which I do. I try and help my students do that. But a lot of it you can really explore by yourself. And if someone's about to part with money, or wants to part with money to work with me, I'll make sure that they're at that point where I know I can help them, rather than, okay, here's some basic rudiments that you should work on, like, see you later. Because I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that guy, because anyone can be that guy.
Yeah, it's definitely there's respect to be had for that as well, because there'll be plenty of people who would just, I'm sure there are plenty of people who would just literally take on whoever, and yeah, you say, oh well, I'm going to be teaching you for the next 10 years now, whereas actually when people come along and you know what they need, and they know, they have some idea of what specifically they want from you, I think that's I try to be quite upfront with students with like what they need and what I offer. And like, I've had a few students where they've asked me, I don't specialize in jazz or classical, they're quite particular, or like flamenco, quite particular styles, where I say, if you're a total beginner, I can actually, I offer a slightly different perspective, I guess, where I would say, if you're a total beginner, I can get you to the point where you can go and learn that stuff, and I can kind of give you some idea of where you're going, but I can't really, I'm going to have to let you go at that point probably. It's almost like the inverse there, I guess, in some ways.
Mine's very much about my time as well, because there's a lot of things I'm trying to do, and practicing TesseracT to the point where I can, because we only have 2 days in a room as a band before we go on tour, so I've got to practice on the kit behind me here at home quite a bit, and I've got to do drum lessons, and I've got responsibilities at home as well, like with the animals and things. So I only take on 5 students a year, and I'll meet with them once a month, and that's it. And other than that, everything else I've got is an online course style thing. But even for people that are joining the course, same kind of thing. I give them the option, at least, to book a call with me before they do it, so that we know that we're on the same page. And I've got a form that people fill out that tells me the stage that they're at, and they leave links to performances and stuff. And you can't sign up for it until I've gone through that and sent you an email back to say, okay, this is going to help, or I don't think this is for you right now. And it's, I'm just trying to make sure that everyone that joins this is happy. Everyone that works with me is happy, because as soon as someone comes in who doesn't have a good experience, I'll get a YouTube commenter, and I'm trying to never have that happen, because someone loves to say when they have a bad time. Not that many people love to say when they have a good time. Getting a testimonial is more difficult than getting a bad review.
Yeah, I got this. It might make you laugh. I got my first 1-star review on my Google profile for my teaching the other day. But Alex, it's just so ridiculous. So I've got it's not my address, but it's just like the basically a rough address for me, because I do in-person lessons, and I was teaching a lesson like middle of the day, and I noticed I had 5 missed calls on my phone, all from the same number. So I said to my student, sorry, I wouldn't normally, but I kind of want to check that this isn't like an emergency or something. And I called them back, and I could hear the guy outside, and he was like, yeah, I'm here for a lesson. And I was kind of and I thought at first, I was like, oh no, have I double booked or something, And then he was like, and then I said, have we spoken? I didn't recognize his voice. And he's like, no, I'm just kind of here for a guitar lesson. I was like, oh what? Man, I'm teaching right now. I can't. And he tried to keep me on the phone, and I was kind of just like, look, I'm really sorry, I've got to go. I'm teaching literally right now. Hung up the phone, and I didn't message him back or call him, because this guy's, he just seemed weird. I mean, that's a weird thing to do, isn't it?
That's a weird thing to do.
And then he left me a review on Google saying I was rude. Something about lunch. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know what he wanted.
Oh no.
And then, so I mean, my response to the review obviously was just I just laid the whole situation out. So I think any sensible person that sees it will just be like, okay, well, that's stupid, isn't it?
That's unfortunate, man.
And so it's my first 1-star review, but I've got enough other good ones, and I got a few more people to leave some, so it bumped his out the way as well. But
I feel kind of bad for that person, not because you said no, but just because whatever has happened to them in life, they think that's acceptable to do.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird place to be. Yeah, and then the next day, someone called me and asked if I do free lessons. I was like, no, I don't do that at all. And then he was like, do you do PayPal? I was like, yeah, I can. And then he just hung up. I was like, oh, okay. Well, interesting. So,
yeah.
I'm guessing you don't get as much.
A lot of people want things for free.
Yeah, I don't know what. I mean, I guess if you call 100 tutors, one of them might say yes.
Yeah. I give people a taster of things for sure. And I've got to the point where if I've got a, what's it called, mailing list form on my website. And if you go through there, you put your email address in, say the thing that you want to improve at, and it'll link you to a lesson within the site that covers that thing, right? So I've got a load of things. And if it isn't in there and you tell me what you're trying to improve, I've also got 150 odd lessons that I've recorded that are just in my database that I can link you to something free. So I want people to get an idea of whether my teaching style is going to be for them, and not just my teaching style, the way I am, my personality and stuff, but also the way that I've got it formatted for the website. Because there's a system I use where I can sync transcription to a performance video, and I've got, you know, the overhead performance, the flattering performance, I've got the side angle where I look like a troll playing the drums, and then I've got the front performance, whatever. I've got the feet as well, so you can see double kick, and you can slow down those videos to whatever speed that you need to play along to it. That's kind of the point. So I want people to work through one of the lessons to get a vibe for whether that's going to be the way that they want to learn these things. And you know, sometimes the vast majority of people, it's like it's a numbers game, isn't it? You have to get eyes in front of the thing. Some people get to a point and they book a call to speak to me about doing paid lessons. The majority just want the free lesson because they just want to answer the question that they've got about the thing. But even that is great, because if I can help someone with this thing that I'm giving out for free and it gets them past that hurdle and they go on, they can carry on their journey, then I've done a service. You know, I've done something good. So that's the way I like to try and justify it anyway. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, that's a sort of positive note to, you know, rather than my weird anecdote. It's a positive note to end on. It's a nice sort of, rather than just weirdo. I had another weirdo yesterday. I was teaching a lesson. My students must just think like this is the weirdest place in the world. But there was this guy, it was about 8 o'clock last night, and I hear this shouting out the window. And I was with a student, and I was just like, oh, what's that? I just had a quick look out the window. And then some guy on the road just like pointed up at, he obviously saw because my light was on, he saw me. He went, oh, and he called me this, that, and the other. Like, I was like, I have no idea who this guy is.
Oh,
and
man.
I think someone blocked his car in or something. And he was like, yeah, come down here. I was like, what? I don't know who you are.
Oh my God. That sounds uniquely British, I will say. Come down here. Like,
yeah, it was proper. It was a proper like Monty Python, you know, with the French at the top of the castle. I felt like one of them, yeah. Or is it the other way around? They shout the English. I can't remember which way it is, but yeah. And he was just, I was like, I don't even know who this guy is. It was very odd.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So it's yeah, my life. Anyway, so I need a question for the next conversation and an artist. So one that will start off. You can make it as abstract as your. So the actual question he asked you was, what would you decide? Why would you decide to go into music of all things that can happen in the world? That was his actual sort of phrased question, but you did answer it. All right. From the one before.
My question is going to be, assuming that the people that you get on here, the musicians or some kind of creatives, and the next person is doing something creative. The top piece of advice that you'd give to anyone that's trying to do this, that's trying to make this their full-time thing, what in your experience has been the lesson that you've learned that's taught you the most that you'd want to get out to as many people as you can?
It's a good question. Yeah, nice, cool, very practical as well. If you got an artist you could plug to the world?
So man, I've thought about this, because this is going to sound really weird, but I don't listen to music. I don't listen to very much at all these days. So like an actual artist that is on my list that I can say, oh my God, these guys are amazing, you got to check out their new release, I can't give you, but I can give you the bands that we're going on tour with in the US and Europe, which I think is probably a good substitute for that. Intervals Unprocessed, and Alluvial, and the Callous Dow Boys. If you haven't heard of any of those, you should go and check those out, because they're touring with us, with TesseracT. And if you come into the show, you're going to see them, so you may as well hear what they sound like.
Yeah. I always regret going to shows, hearing a band that's really cool, going, oh, I kind of wish, because obviously in metal shows it's so loud, you don't always know what's going on, and it's like, I kind of wish I knew, like, I knew exactly what I was hearing, if that makes it sounds like a really sort of silly thing to say, but like,
Yeah.
I wish I knew the lyrics because I actually really like what's going on here. I just can't fully
Yeah.
put it together when it's all been blasted out at me, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Anything you want to plug coming up? Things coming up?
No, just come and see TesseracT. If you're in the world, we're doing a world tour, and there will be a show that is not too far from you, I'm sure. And I'd love it if you left your home to come and see us.
Awesome. If you're in the world, that's a
yes,
reasonable request, I guess. Yeah.
We're playing everywhere pretty much. There's some places that aren't on the tour poster yet because they weren't announced, and people are saying, why aren't you playing here? Like, just wait. We will more than almost certainly come and play closer. But what is funny, I will say this before we go, is in the UK especially, we'll play, I don't know, let's say there's a Birmingham show. You get people from Wolverhampton going, oh my God, I can't believe, it's so far to go to Birmingham. People don't travel in the UK. It's crazy. But unless people are going on holiday, people are going to an airport, they don't travel. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's the British thing. Just get in the queue, just wait. Just you'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're playing, I can't remember all the places, but I know like London, Birmingham, Bristol, somewhere in Scotland. I don't know if I've got the thing here I can just see, can't I?
When's your Birmingham date?
Anyway,
Because hopefully I'll see if I can make it down to that.
Yeah, Birmingham, it's going to be January or February next year. I can't remember exactly where and when, but
at a time in the world.
Yeah, I grew up in Brum.
I thought you might be. I could hear that,
yeah, come to Brum.
Nice.
I'll meet you in person.
Excellent. Cool. Well, thank you very much, man.
My pleasure.